Give him a round of applause. Got Jimmy Jenkins, entrepreneur, community leader, and business educator. Give him a round of applause. And nationally recognized moderator and a good friend of mine, Brandon Scoop B. Robinson, national broadcast journalist and executive producer. Now, tonight isn't about me, but it is very special. Following this presentation, we're going to have amazing, I'm going to call it a concert because, you know, we got all the stars out tonight. DJ Wildchild following the panel is going to bless us with her vibes. And you all as a panel, you all as a group will also have an opportunity to do a Q&A. But with that being said, let's get into our panel for this evening. Our first panelist, none other than Mr. Ricky Williams, Heisman Trophy winner, former NFL player, entrepreneur, big time, big fish in a very large pond. Ricky Williams is a former NFL star turned holistic healer, entrepreneur, and advocate for mental and physical wellness after an illustrious football career where he made history as a Heisman Trophy winner and a record-breaking running back. Ricky took a bold step away from the game to focus on self-discovery, healing, and alternative wellness practices. Through his journey, he studied herbal medicine, astrology, and holistic healing, leading to the founding of Heisman, his personal brand focused on elevating wellness and personal empowerment. Ricky is widely recognized for challenging social norms around mental health, personal freedom, and finding purpose beyond traditional success. Today, Ricky continues to push conversations forward about wellness, purpose-driven entrepreneurship, and redefining what success looks like for Black men in leadership. I know he got a little gray in his beard today, but this brother will run you over. Can we please give a round of applause for Ricky Williams? Now, I told y'all today is about, it's very liberating for me, right? It's very liberating for me. And when we were first getting started here at Georgetown, I say we because myself and my co-founders, we were young men with big dreams. And we said, well, you know, we're going to be the biggest, baddest nonprofit organization in the District of Columbia until we met this brother, Jimmy Jenkins. Good God. Is Jimmy still here? We still got Jimmy in the back. All right, Jimmy Jenkins. And Jimmy knows this story. Jimmy went on Instagram and he said, these brothers are not allowed in Ward 8. And I said, Jimmy, goddamn, my grandmother live in Ward 8. I can't visit her no more? No. And I had to go check in with this brother. And he taught me a valuable life lesson as I continue in this work to always give honor and respect to the people that have come before you. So when I say that, can we please give a round of applause for a brother that I've come to know and love and always respect, Brother Jimmy Jenkins, entrepreneur, community leader, and business educator. Jimmy Jenkins is a father, a terrible basketball player, a leader, and a true son of Washington, D.C., dedicated to uplifting urban communities and closing the racial economic wealth gap. His mission is to create pathways to success for young Black men through education, sports, and entrepreneurship. He runs like 5 different companies and a bunch of different fields. So if I mentioned all of them, y'all would be a little bit confused. But just know that he is doing a lot of different things, from being the owner of the Culture DC, the CEO of Manpower DC, the president of District Sports AAU program. This list is very long. But Jimmy works, mentors, he mentors, and he is a leader. He is rooted in ensuring that those who come from disadvantaged backgrounds have the resources to rise. His focus is not just on individual success, but on building long-term, community-driven solutions that create generational wealth and empowerment. Can we please give one more round of applause for Brother Jimmy Jenkins? All right, and rounding us off, who's going to take us into an amazing conversation this evening, a brother of mine. We met in this work. To know good projects is to know that we work in a public housing community every single day, one that not many people visit, even bother to care about. This brother stumbled into our center one day and has continued to support us every second since. Brandon Scoop B. Robinson, moderator and national broadcaster. Can we please give him a round of applause? Now, Scoop B is a nationally recognized broadcaster, executive producer, and journalist with over 2 decades of experience covering sports, media, and culture. His journey began by age 12. He was the host of Nets Slammin' Planet, a 1990s AM radio show. He's dating himself a little bit there. A 1990s AM radio show covering the New Jersey Nets. His unique ability to engage with athletes, celebrities, and culture makers stems from growing up in Harlem and working at his family's shoe store, where he built relationships with sports legends like Dizzy Gillespie, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Dominique Wilkins. Since then, Scoop B has appeared on major networks including CBS, NBC, CNN, Fox, The New York Post, NBA TV, ESPN, Bally Sports, SNY, MSG Networks, Billboard, Vibe, Jet Magazine. He might have been on Cartoon Network. Who knows? He's been everywhere. You might have seen him on NBA 2K video games, the Scoop B radio podcast. This brother has interviewed guests like Shaquille O'Neal, Mark Cuban, Don Lemon, DJ Khaled, everybody. Beyond broadcasting, he's an educator serving as a visiting professor at Ohio University's E.W. Scripps School of Journalism, lecturer at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and the university professor at New Jersey City University. Brandon is a thought leader in sports media, culture, and business, making him the perfect moderator for this powerful conversation on leadership, legacy, and impact. I promise you guys, I am leaving you in amazing hands with Brother Scoop B. The floor is yours, brother.
Check, check, 1, 2. How's everybody doing? I don't know how to talk after this. This is like Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth. I'm just a little guy. Nonetheless, it's great to see everybody here at Georgetown University. Purpose tour. Purpose. Living within your purpose. Reading you two gentlemen's bio and body of work, you have truly lived within your purpose. I think that's so important in today's climate, today in general. Standing on business, as the younger people say. I think we do say it too. We ain't that old. But nonetheless, having this conversation about beyond the game, leadership, legacy, and community impact, to me, no time better than in our nation's capital having this conversation. So first and foremost, for you two gentlemen, I will start off with this question simply. We all know that success isn't just about talent. It's about mindset. When did you, if you guys saw the movie Brown Sugar, they ask, when did you fall in love with hip hop? I'm gonna remix that. When did you guys realize that your impact went beyond your profession? Anybody can go first. I'm guessing he's making you go first.
He's the legend. So, I realized that my impact went beyond just my ability to play sports and just be whom I am. Was my 12th grade year of high school. I had the opportunity to speak in a community meeting. And it was around the same issues we're facing today. It was around gun violence in my community. And the things that I was touching on, a lot of the leaders who were the people we supposed to turn to for advice or solutions took what I said and created solutions for our community. And at the time, I just was kind of focusing on basketball, football, the normal things, and, you know, trying to figure out if I wanted to go to college or, you know, I was battling, you know, streets and all these things. But then when I spoke in that room and everybody just kind of just started clapping after I spoke about my concerns and the things that I felt like was needed, I realized that I had a purpose, and it was far beyond just being in the hood hooping or, you know, just being a kid from Southeast Washington, D.C. And so I wanted to figure out how do I tap into that. And so, you know, the sports was just like that vehicle for me. And so I realized then when I was in 12th grade that I had a purpose.
You had a purpose before they had an opinion. Thankfully, their opinion was good of you. You at the UNC status now. Mr. Williams.
Yeah, it didn't happen for me until much, much later. I had the idea when I was probably 12, watching college football on television, and I started to do the math. I started to realize that, you know, if I can run fast and score touchdowns, that people will treat me differently. People will treat me better. So it was, my main concern was just being treated like a human being. And I think that's what motivated me to work so hard at my sport. And I love the sport, but it was the perks. And I think one of the things with a lot of early success is that you become defined by that early success. And if it's early, it's usually from some work ethic, but if it's early, it's usually from God-given talent, you know? And I think the difficulty with that is if you only exploit your God-given talent and you don't, then typically you're not motivated to develop other parts of yourself where you can offer more. And so for me, it wasn't until I started failing drug tests, you know? Because before then, I was kind of the model of how it's supposed to be, but my internal experience was like, this is it. And then after I failed the drug test, I was at the airport and some dude walked up to me and he like dapped me up. And I was feeling ashamed because when I grew up, it's like the one thing they said is don't throw it away for drugs. Right? And there I was, threw it away for drugs. But I realized that there's a different story. There's a bigger story. And my well-being, my wellness, and my happiness was a priority. And for me to put that over all the money and all the fame, I saw that it really affected people. And it allowed me to retell my story, to tell a different story.
You bring a lot of insight to this conversation, the both of you. I want to encourage everyone who is here to make sure that they are, in fact, using the hashtag Purpose Tour 25. If you are tagging, make sure that you mention Good Projects DC. Make sure you tag these gentlemen on the panel as well, as they are giving a lot of insight. This panel is segmented into 4 different acts. We are currently in the first act, which we've titled it More Than an Athlete, More Than a Brand, the personal journeys and breaking the mold. And Ricky, I want to keep it right there because you talked about the perks, you talked about people looking at you walking in the airport. I want to take that and raise you this. You had a very public career transition. You played in the NFL for 11 years. You're a Heisman Trophy winner, most notably in the NFL playing for the Saints, the Dolphins, the Ravens. And in addition to that, I didn't know this until maybe 2 days ago, you actually played or were drafted in '95 to play Major League Baseball. Pitcher?
I was an outfielder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who was your muse?
Tony Gwynn. I grew up in San Diego, so
Makes sense.
yeah, watching Tony Gwynn.
Tell me this. Having had that public career transition from the NFL to entrepreneurship and holistic wellness, what was the moment that made you say, I need to move a little differently?
Yeah, I remember the moment. It was 2004. We were off-season workouts, and I was sitting in my locker and just listening to the conversation all the guys were having. And I just had one of those moments, and I was like, is this it? You know, I started thinking about when I was young, and I started thinking about being treated like a human being. Part of it was because I wanted to make a difference in the world. But people, they ain't even paying attention to me. How am I going to make a difference? But I got so caught up in making a name for myself that I looked around and I realized I'm not really doing anything. You know, I'm entertaining people for a couple hours on Sundays, sometimes Mondays, sometimes Thursdays. But beyond that, I wasn't doing anything. And it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. And I realized I got to do something different with my life.
Jimmy, you wear many hats. And quite frankly, I'd put my money on saying you are the uncle or the godfather of DC at this point because you are just all around, all encompassing, whether that's Manpower, DC Enterprises, owner of the culture, DC, all the things that Darius introduced you as. But I'll pose that same question to you, point blank. What made you focus your career on creating opportunities for others?
So in that bio, Darius did mention that, you know, I grew up in a single-family household in Southeast Washington, D.C., where violence was plagued every day and drug abuse and, you know, all these things that we continue to suffer from as a black community. I just felt like I wanted to change conditions of black people because I knew how hard it was for me, even with the support of my dad and, you know, mentors and, you know, all these things that my mom did to help provide support for me. It still was so hard for me to make it out of Southeast Washington, D.C. And so for me, when I came back and I saw the same issues, kids had to face the same issues I faced, you know, from 7, 8, 10 years ago, you know. And so I said, well, my number one thing now is just how do I plant seeds, right? How do I create opportunities for the next generation? Because I know the generation before me really didn't do that, right? They were like, you see them, but it wasn't like they were engaging us. But we were kind of experiencing what this younger generation is experiencing now. Everybody's pointing the finger at them, but nobody's creating these opportunities, or they don't have these spaces where they could create their own opportunities. And so for me, I was like, I just can't do one thing. Like, if you ever go in the community and see the things that, the conditions, you know, our kids are growing up in, it's like, I got to tap into everything, right? I went and bought a barbershop. So I'm like, well, some of them might want to cut hair. I went and got the culture because some of them was into music. You know, I coach basketball because some of them want to play sports, right? And so I'm in the schools. So it's like, I want to try to make sure that I create these spaces where they have these opportunities that never existed. And so a lot of the stuff I do is just around creating pathways to self-sustainability for these younger people that's growing up in D.C.
You guys went from being recognized, doing the work, being in the field, literally, to cultivating what you'd like to see in the community, which ties into influence. You see a lot of influencers on social media. They influence what you buy, how you spend your money, and more. But you guys are doing that grassroots, and you're taking care of home first and bringing that influence to the world. So the thing that I'm curious to hear from both of you is this. A lot of people gain influence, but they don't know how to use it. That being said, how did you all learn to leverage your platform for something bigger than just yourselves?
Again, anybody that can tell you that grew up in the hood, if you are a person with influence, I understood that my influence could be good or it could be bad, because everybody's going to do whatever I say, not in a way like I'm bullying or nothing like that, but they believed in me. And so I realized that if I can move people and see them smile and be able to take care of their kids, I mean, I'm talking about people that's my age, and take them from not having opportunities to creating opportunities for themselves, and then they start doing that for the next person, it motivated me to, you know, take that path. You know, I started seeing more results when I would use my influence for a positive way than when I was using it for a negative way, right? And so I saw people's lives changing. I saw people being able to take care of their kids. I saw friends getting jobs and starting businesses. And whereas though when I was on the other side with my influence, I started seeing people do jail time. I started seeing friends lose their life. And so what I saw was better and faster results on the positive side. So that kept me motivated to do these things.
That's real.
Yeah, this question making me kind of emotional because is the route that I took. The influence came because I followed the rules, you know, and there's the expected behavior and there's unexpected behavior. You know, it's like always thinking of, you know, I feel something on the inside, but I have to ask myself, what is going to be the influence of this? And I don't mean like good influence, bad influence, but this feeling of this is something that feels like true to me and is part of what I feel like I'm on this planet to do, but it will affect my external influence. And so I think part of the answer to the question is, I think we have influence from playing the game, and then we have the hard-won influence of developing it on the inside, so it radiates outwardly. And so I go back to the moment where started failing drug tests, and I literally felt all the hard work and effort I put into creating this image, it was gone that fast. And it was like a death. But in the same moment, it was a rebirth of something else. It was an opportunity to become more authentic and more real, because I saw like all the role models is like to be a role model, you have to pretend, right? You have to hide parts of yourself that are not accepted. And being liberated from that and being able, the nudge to start being authentic, I started thinking that's the kind of role model that I want to be. Not one that's perfect, but one that's human and one that has the ability to turn pain into power. Because one of the things we saw in documentary and that we see in anyone's life story that's worth hearing is you have to go through things, right? How else can you grow? How else can you develop? How else can you really connect to other people? And my definition, a simple definition of entrepreneurship, is you see a problem and you do something about it, right? And because we've all had different things that have affected us and has caught our attention, we all are going to notice different things. And for me, the effort has been developing the aptitudes and the skills and the connections to prepare myself to actually make a response to the things that I see.
You know, Ricky, as you're talking, I'm reverting back to a conversation I had with Grant Hill years ago, where he basically said you spend more time off the court than you do on it, and it's on an athlete's onus to find something they like, something they're good at, something that taps into their personality, and brand it, franchise it, make it their own. And it seems that you've found that niche in the wellness space. So I guess sticking with that theme, you've been vocal about using wellness as a tool for empowerment, especially in the Black communities. How do you see that connecting to legacy and long-term impact?
Well, just that people have people that were touched by my story. Because I think it's with fame, something I had to wrestle with, is fame, it comes and it goes, right? It's generational, right? The kids are like, who's that? Who's that, right? Thank God for YouTube, all right? But I had to wrestle with fame, and I thought, like, what do I want to represent for somebody? And for me, I want to represent something that's just not external, but it touches something on the inside because people can relate to something that they've been through. And I think the thing, for better or for worse, that we can most relate to is our own pain and our own suffering of people not appreciating who we are on the inside, people not seeing us, people taking us for granted. And so that whatever I do with my life, that it's a story of our humanity and what it can be, what it can evolve into becoming. It's like, when I was growing up, again, when I failed the drug test, everyone was saying, like, can't you just stop for a little bit, right? And yeah, maybe, but why? And a lot of it was fear-based, right? Because you're going to mess up your money, you're going to mess up your legacy. And for me, there's this moment where the University of Texas, they built a statue and they named the field after me. And this is after all the failed drug tests. So for me, it was more about proving that if you stay true to yourself, eventually the cream will rise to the top. Because staying true to yourself, you're spending your time and your effort developing yourself, not developing what other people have defined you as. And I think that's what I want my legacy to be, is that people feel more permission to be themselves, right? Because we have things in our head, and then we have that other voice that comes in and says, you can't do that, you can't say that. And I want to represent something that encourages people to be that, to show up.
Jimmy, you are our local DC expert with the youth in residence. So I'm curious, having worked with young people every day, how do you teach them about power, influence, and making strategic moves for their future?
First, I want to tell you, man, that I'm being inspired through this conversation. Like, I haven't ever heard you speak. I was a running back when you were in the lead, and I was a fan of yours since Texas. If you look up Little League football, I thought I was you, right? So I'm inspired. This is a real moment for me, and to hear you speak, brother, I'm inspired and I'm motivated just to be in the presence and hear you speak. So I want to commend you on how you turned your story, because it does something for me.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right away, you know what I'm saying? So I appreciate that. To your question, I try to make my ability to impact kids on all levels. I try to make it personal, because I've seen so many people before me make it about money, right? And because they make it about money, we miss out on the impact we can make on the kids' lives because they caught up in the money. And so when I engage kids, I make it personal. I want to know, what is it that I can do to help you reach the things you want to accomplish in life? What are some of the things that we need to do as a city to help you all reach those things? And so, I run into situations where kids don't have an ear, because sometimes adults, we try to just overtalk them and tell them what we think they need. And sometimes kids just want somebody to hear them out, right? And doing that, I'm able to hear, some of the things that concern them or may have hurt them, and then I'm able to create a strategy to help them overcome some of those things. And so for me, I just want to be that person who not only is looked at as the person that's successful or have all these things, but I want to be that person that they can go to and tell some of them darkest secrets, right? Because I know for me, growing up, we was always conditioned to not express as young men. Like, you gotta be tough, you gotta be this person. And that kids find their power and their purpose when they know that people care about them. And it's bigger than just a job, or it's about $1 or being paid to help them. And so I just want to be that ear. I want to be that person that they can come to, but also show them the way. And so that's me.
I like that. You both talked about the village. You talked about the journey, your families, your friends, the community, and all of those things that build who you are today in your respective field. In business, they often say it's not what you know, it's who you know, but also who knows you. That being said, how do you both navigate the realms of building relationships that actually lead to impact?
I learned this about 7 years ago when a development company came to my community, and they actually based here in Georgetown, MCN Build. My neighborhood was getting remodeled, and I learned to be comfortable being in spaces where I'm not the smartest or the richest, and I can be vulnerable. And that led me to be who I am today. And so I go into spaces, and I'm at the table, and folks are talking about doing $900 million in construction, and I'm talking about trying to do $250,000. And I'm comfortable with that because I'm building relationships with people that can help me or put me on the track to do that. And I think sometimes with a lot of people in our generation is that we want to always be the person or be that guy. And I was comfortable with not always being that guy. I want to be in the space where I don't know it all. And I want to meet people from different backgrounds. And when people that's from my background, when they see me, they question, like, how did you get that? How did you get this? How did you get that? And I always tell them, number one, it was by the grace of God. And then also with me asking questions and being in spaces where I am vulnerable and I don't know all the answers. And so I hope I answered your question.
You answered it. You answered it.
Yeah. So I think that's extremely important, the vulnerability piece, because to me, I think if you have an idea and you can do it all by yourself, you're probably not thinking big enough. And the nature of evolution, all kinds of evolution, we evolve from single units to groups, to colonies, to collectives. But we're each individuals in the collective. And I just got this from playing football for so long because, You got people from around the country who become really, really good at what they do, but in order to make it work, you all have to be on the same page. And football is easy because it's clear what the goal is to win. And I think for me, finding the right people and being wise in how I invest my time and my energy is first being clear on what my goals are. Being clear on what my goals are and being clear on what I have to offer. Because part of connecting with other people is that they have something that can help support you, but for it to be a productive relationship, you have to offer something too. So for me, it's being clear about what I have to offer and what my goals are, and being discriminating to make sure that we're all on the same level. I mean, because I made a lot of mistakes, and I think the biggest mistakes in business, it really comes down to people, right? But it's like a relationship. You know, if you have the same goal and you have some vulnerability and respect for the other person, I think anything is possible. But if you don't have those things, right, those will be the things that get in the way.
It's said about sports, no pain, no gain. I hear you talking about working with different people and not necessarily being the smartest in the room and maybe not make the most money, but making impact, and vice versa, you know, in the sense of just collaborating with people. The cost of success is a big thing. What did Meek Mill say? You had to grind like this to shine like that, right? So I'm curious, as we're transitioning into the topic of cost of success, what they don't tell you, and I leave this open to you both. Everyone talks about the highlight reel. Instagram, social media often is the highlight reel of your life. But what's a hard lesson you learned on the way to success?
So it is effort. There's no doubt about it. In order to become as successful as you'd like to be, it requires intelligent effort. And I had a coach, and he would always say, practice makes, and he'd wait for us to say perfect, and he'd say, no. Practice makes permanent. He'd say perfect practice makes perfect. So for me, the main thing is making sure that I'm climbing the right mountain, right? Because in order to success, you got to climb, you got to overcome obstacles. And we start off young, right? And when we're young, we don't know as much as we're going to learn through those experiences. So I think anyone really climbing that ladder is going to reach a point where they've realized they're climbing the wrong mountain, and to be able to be humble enough to recognize that, come down and find the right mountain. So it's work ethic, it's humility, and it's intelligence or discernment. I think that's really key for me. But no doubt, right? It is going to take effort.
If I can follow up on that, how much do you think playing football helped you master the game of life when you retired?
Oh man, that's the thing that I will say. Regardless of what my NFL career was like, I will always cherish the things that I learned from football, because you get hit in the mouth, and you have to get back up and you have to do it again. And one of the things, especially at the highest level, there's no excuses, right? Coach will I played for Nick Saban for a year, right? He would put on the film, and he would say, do your job or we'll get someone in here that will. So it's kind of harsh, but when you have, like, the reality ain't no one going to come save you, is that you have to take care of yourself. You have to use your teammates as resources, but you have to take care of yourself. The greatest lesson is just not to make excuses, right? And to realize that everything that the Lord puts in our life is for us to adapt to and overcome. And in football, you get that every day.
Double J, how do you deal with the pressure of constantly having to prove yourself in your field?
I struggle with it during my early years, like 2018, 2019, because we live in a city where it's crab in the barrel mentality, right? And when you have an influence on social media and you may post some of the things your success, and you're trying to tell your story, it's like there's this thing they say, you're doing it for the gram. And so for me, I always have to go before God now, and in my later years, with anything I'm doing. And so I don't have to worry about the noise, right? I just focus on my path, right? And so when I see kids graduate and I'm helping them go off to college, or I see, like, my brother right here, Steph, I met him years ago, and every time I saw him, and I got to use him for example, every time I saw this brother, he like, man, I need a job. I'm trying to work in the schools. And that was 3 years ago. And he's been with me. He's working. He's one of my lead point persons at the schools. I made him a head coach at JV. They went to the championship this year. It's moments like that, right, that when men come home and they reach out to me and I see that, it's easier for me to quiet the noise. I don't have to hear, oh, he's doing it for the gram, because I know in real life there's people's lives that I'm impacting every day. And so whatever they say, it don't distract me because I stay focused on the path.
Jimmy, I'll add to that. As a person who wears multiple hats as a coach and mentor and more, how do you, in your role, how are you able to help or guide young people to see the big picture, not just what's in front of them right now?
It's your lifestyle, right? You got to practice what you preach. You know, there's so many people who are fraudulent when it comes to being mentors. I'm not going to ask a kid to do something that I'm not doing, right? And everybody is so confused about the streets look the way they look. It's because the blind are leading the blind. You got OGs asking young people to put guns down, but they got guns on them. You got OGs asking young people to stop selling drugs or doing these things, disrespecting women, but they doing the same thing. And so I make sure that whatever I'm preaching, I'm practicing and I'm showing them that. And so it's easier for me to get those results because they see that whatever I ask, I'm doing it. And not just a mentor, as a father, right? My kids don't have to get on social media or look online for a successful person because he exists in the house, right? I'm that hero. I'm that person that they look at that's fly, that's getting money, that's taking care of family, right? I'm that person that they look up to. And so, you know, even beyond just doing it in the community, in my household itself, I'm showing that to my kids. And it's easier to believe when you see it.
That's real. Ricky, you made a lot of choices in your career that at the time a lot of people didn't understand. How did you stay true to your vision even when people didn't get it?
I didn't understand either. I think I was very fortunate. I was raised in the church, and so I was taught at a very young age that Jesus lives in my heart, and that's the way that I quiet the noise. There's so much noise out here, but the more you truly know who you are, right? Hopefully that voice can be a little bit louder. So I could feel that I was moving in the direction I was supposed to move in, but all the thoughts and everything I was trained was telling me, no, don't do it, you're crazy, don't do it. But luckily that inner voice, and the truth is, I think, is listening to the outer voices became so much more painful than what I was going to have to suffer listening to the inner voice, that it kind of became, I won't say easy, but it became obvious that this is a path that I was supposed to go. And it required a lot of very difficult conversations with myself. And I think to me, that's the most valuable thing you can have, are difficult conversations with yourself. Because everything on the outside is what I was hearing, and headlines, I threw my career away, I threw everything away. And I started to believe it. And then I waited and I said, wait a minute, I decide how this story goes. And if this is the path that's been open to me, then it's my job to walk it to the best of my ability. And if you do that, I'm telling you, the good Lord will send you signs. I remember I was in the middle of a swamp in Australia. And part of me was saying, if I lost my mind, if I throw my whole life away. And I met this man in the middle of the swamp, and he had a Bible. And he said, here. And he gave me the Bible. And I flipped open the Bible to Matthew. And I read a verse, like, if you leave your family, your wealth, home, everything looking for me, it will all come back 1,000-fold. And in that moment, I knew I was on the right path. I knew that it's a path that there might be exemplars, there might be examples of people who have walked their own path, but what you're going to recognize in all those stories is that it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, and it was only some kind of internal strength and connection that helped them make it. So I say the course of my life, I've been very benefited by stories, you know, And again, growing up, I love Sunday school, right? Those stories. And they were there for me when I needed them.
Ricky, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about today's athlete in college and the era of the NIL. You as a Heisman Trophy winner, as a running back in the NFL, you see that Reggie Bush got his Heisman back. You're seeing that players are now making money off of their names. At this point in 2025, two-part question, do you feel like you missed the boat, one? And two, do you ever ask what if?
Yeah. So do I feel like I missed the boat? Kinda. I was, like you mentioned, I was a baseball player. I got drafted at a high school. So I wasn't on scholarship, and I made a decent amount of money playing baseball. So I not the kind of money I would have made these days, but I was doing all right. If I say what if, honestly, I would have got myself into more trouble. I would have. That's one of the difficult conversations with myself is I wasn't prepared for success. I wasn't prepared to do anything. All my time and energy was focused on being a football player. I didn't know what to do with the money. I didn't know what to do with the success. I didn't know what to do with the influence. That's why I had that moment where I realized if I want my life to be something, I got to get out of here and have some real life experiences. And I think that's my message for young people, right? Is you're not supposed to have it figured out when you're young. I mean, even if you think of fruit, right? Fruit matures and it ripens and you pull it off right before the end of the season. It takes time, right? But if you don't do the boring watering and feeding it and taking care of it on a daily basis, then the fruit's not going to be as big or as juicy. So it's really about not being afraid to make mistakes, surrounding yourself with people that care about you through the mistakes. Because anything that you focus on, you're going to improve. You're going to get better. And if the focus is on being yourself, you're going to improve and you're going to get better at it. Might not be pretty in the beginning, but you're going to improve and get better at it. And so I look at all the money that I did make, and I really invested it into being myself. And if I'm talking to these young kids about money, is like I'm trying to get them to think, what is the purpose of it? What is the purpose of it? And I was thinking about this today, about the different versions of my story. And as I grow and have more experiences, I can tell better versions of the story. Right? It's like, how many times have we looked back and we're like, oh, that's why I needed to go through this. You know, that's why I needed to have this kind of experience. And I think I can say I retired at 27 and I got to become closer to God. Right? And it's real, because if we're spending most of our time, right, trying to put food on the table, right? That's time and that's effort. And sometimes we're so stressed, all we can just say is like, help, God, right? And that can serve to make us closer. But really, I think the value of resources is so that we can have more time to find out what's really important and then get on with that. At least that's been my path.
Amen. Preach, preacher. You guys are doing all right over there? You guys have been very patient, but also I can tell by your body language that you may have some questions. So before we go into that, I do have one more question for the both of you as we wrap up. And it's simply this. What's one powerful principle that you both use to guide your leadership, business, or personal growth?
For me, it's a kind of a mantra, something I repeat to myself a lot, and something one of my coaches used to say. He would say, you're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotting, is you never stay the same. So it's every moment, right? Every moment, depending on where our mind is or what we're doing, is an opportunity to move towards progress.
I'm going to steal that for the basketball guys. I got to write that down. For me, I always grew up and I heard people saying, like, you know, when they make it or they get a successful story, they're like, I'm a product of my environment, right? And so for me, I always said to myself that I'm a product of my own expectations, right? Because my environment was filled with so much negativity, right? That I always wanted to exceed it or go above and beyond what my environment was. Because my neighborhood, I saw myself going so much further than just being in the neighborhood. And so for me, I just wanted to check off things on my bucket list. You know, I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to be the first to graduate from college. I wanted to buy a house with many acres. You know, these some of the things that I wanted. And so I knew that wasn't a standard, or it wasn't things that was of my community, right? Because everybody was on Section 8. Everybody lived in apartments. And so, you know, back in 2021, I was looking at land, it was like 6 acres. And I was like, damn, this is bigger than my whole neighborhood, right? And so I always wanted to go above and beyond. And so my thing was always that I wanted to be a product of my own expectations. And so I didn't want to be of the world or of my community. I wanted to be Jimmy Jenkins. And so that's who I am.
Jimmy Jenkins and Ricky Williams, you both have been a wealth of knowledge. Before we sign off on this program, I want to get about 2-3 questions in with the group. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and our executive producer will call on you and we'll approach you with the microphone. So.
One more time, a round of applause for Scoop B, Jimmy Jenkins, and Ricky Heisman Williams, dropping gems of Georgetown University. Hey y'all, while we making noise, we heard that the Speaker of the House is here. I want to correct his name because it's Mike Johnson, and we're telling him F him because today they passed the bill to cut DC's budget 217 to 213 votes. They voted yes to cut DC's budget by $1 billion. So when we say make some noise, make a little more noise so they can know DC is in the building. And I told y'all, we making impact all over the country. We got Baldwin Wallace University in the building all the way from the state of Ohio. Make some noise for my Ohio family. All right, we're gonna get into these questions. So when you ask your question, please give us your name, where you're from, and then your question.
All right, good evening. My name is Anthony. I'm from DC, born and raised. And my question for you all, either one can answer it. I guess like for me, I'm at a place where, you know, I'm young, I'm 24, and I'm fortunate enough to like work in an industry that I feel fulfilled. You know, I work for a nonprofit, I'm doing the community work, I'm doing everything. And so I guess my question to you all is just like, how do you teeter that line between like personal and professional development? Because I feel as though, you know, I feel like I definitely want my work to be more sustainable, but I also don't want to give my nonprofit my 100%. You know, I gotta leave some for me and, you know, the types of things that I want to envision and some of my goals. But I also am not the type of person who, you know, want to start another nonprofit or like want to start that business. So, you know, what is the kind of that line between, you know, doing the work, but also, because, you know, I could always do like kind of the one-off things, but to me, I don't feel like that's sustainable. So, you know, how do I continue to build that name for myself while also, you know, making sure that my community's good?
So to answer your question, a lot of people don't know, I started out in government. Darius, you remember that? I was working in a council member Trail White's office in 2016. And I said, I didn't want to give the government all of me because I felt like government was too slow, right? And so what I did was I put myself in that space where I can learn how government operate, right? And so for yourself, it sounds like you're not saying it, but you're going to get there. You're going to be pushing your own nonprofit one day, brother, right? And I think the safest thing for you to do is be there, learn about how you run that organization, connect with other organizations while being at that organization, right? And so when you do get enough up under you, when you step out, you won't fail because you have learned enough and you have connected and rubbed enough elbows so that when you do eventually step out on your own, you have that support, not only for the organization that you're with, but other organizations you may run into or encounter while you're there at that organization. So I hope I was able to help you with that, brother.
Yeah, I mean, I just put a build on that is I think sometimes there's an artificial separation between personal and professional. But I don't think it necessarily has to be that way. It's another way of saying the same thing, of realizing that everything you're doing now is preparing you for a future. And so it's important to think about the future. This is when I say this to a lot of people that I talk with, is I call it thinking technology, like using technology, because thinking technologically is about thinking of what can exist in the future that doesn't exist now. Like, oh, if we had this, things would be so much better. Or if we had this, things would be so much better. Because sometimes we don't realize that in the future, there's going to be things that are possible that are not possible today. And we have the ability to start thinking about it. So think about ideas of the future, and be real about where you are right now, and make a plan of how am I going to get from this point to this point. And then it allows all the things we do to be aligned with our purpose. But I think it's just awareness to help.
How you doing? Jerry Case, I'm a research engineer here in DC, and I'm curious to your thoughts about the evolution of black masculinity. Young men are struggling in a myriad of topics when it comes to relationships or confidence. I mean, looking back at your life, what characteristic or quality would you add now to the portfolio of what you think a man needs to have in his journey from boyhood to manhood?
I think it's a good question, and I think for some reason, in the past several months, I've become really interested in history, and I started going back to the beginning of slavery. Kind of went through the end of slavery, went into Reconstruction, went into the Harlem Renaissance, and I think I took classes in school, but I wasn't mature enough, or paying attention enough to really process it. But I've had life experiences, and I'm able to appreciate that there's a story arc, And I don't know, I'm sure you guys, some people have studied this, but in the early 1900s, we were considered a problem. It was the late 1800s. It was the Negro problem, and you had 4 or 5 million slaves that were freed and kind of out in the world. And so we realized, a lot of the authors realized that there was a developmental process. And that wasn't that long ago. So the developmental process of defining what it means to be African American is ongoing. And one of the things that we started off not having is freedom, right? And I think even to a certain extent, we still don't really have it, because even where we have freedom to make choices, but there's still the definition of what we're supposed to be, but even I think more harmful, what we're not supposed to be. So for me, masculinity is about individuality, about independence, about realizing who you are on the inside, regardless of other people's definition, and then the courage to try to express that into the world. So I think it's a willingness to be different.
And if I can add, I think that's deep. And if I can add, I think as far as this generation, right, I think that's a question that most people are struggling to answer and work towards of getting a solution to. I think what's also missing from when I was growing up is accountability, and just that image of what a man looks like, right? It's like the black man has been removed, right, from community, household, schools, and even with coaching, right? I see a lot of women now are coaching the young men because men are not present, right? And I think the image itself is not available for them young men, right? I think some of us are visual learners, right? We need to see that example, and it's not present, right? And then the other piece is that accountability doesn't exist so early on, right? We're feeding our young people with designer clothes, but they're not getting A's and B's in school, right? And so when these young people are getting this designer clothes, when they turn 16 years old, they're not able to get it no more because you're over the top with them being bad in school. So now they feel like they have to take, right? Because we have spoiled them instead of hold them accountable, right? And so now they get very emotional, right? Because they feel like we're not supporting them, but we never coach them on why they're not receiving these things, why you can't receive those shoes, why you can't get on the game, because you're not doing what you're supposed to do, right? And so accountability and that image is not available for these young men. And so I know for me, that helped turn me into a man when I was being held accountable, when I saw other positive images being a part of my life. That was my coach, my pastor, my dad whenever he was around, right? And so I think for me, that's what is missing.
I also think you're competing for this. If it's not from someone that matters, they don't care. And I think finding that balance of who those leaders are, like yourselves, even if they're not, football players, or they're not basketball players, or they're not rappers, finding someone that they think is cool, because you're competing for attention spans. You're competing for phones. You're competing for all those different things. Minecraft, all that stuff. It's a lot. Last questions.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Moore. I'm from Maryland, former educator in DC, current organizer and mentor. First, Jimmy, I just gotta give you your flowers. Since 2018, whenever I made the phone call, you've picked it up. You have moved mountains with helping me with Mama Mo, Melissa, and the whole South Side, so I'm very grateful for that. And with that in mind, I know a lot of the challenges you have faced, personal and in your work. And my question is, how do you continue to push? And how do you continue to push forward in your purpose and your mission when you face a lot of opposition on day to day?
I don't talk about it, but as you open the space, I can share. I have a 20-year-old brother now who was 14 that was shot 2 blocks away from my mom's house, promising future with football, and he'd be 21 this year, and we had another tough space for him because he was recently shot in the head 2 years ago, and so he had a emergency surgery 2 weeks ago, and we were putting plans together for him to go to Miami for his 21st birthday. Now we figured out how we're going to put something together because he had to sit in the rehab for 3 to 6 months. And so it's like every moment of my life, no matter how many wins I get, I still have to face adversity. But like this brother said, I got to keep looking at the end. I have kids I still have to raise. I have young people I have to raise. And so for me, my little brother since that time of 2018 has been my motivation. If I show him that it's difficult with me changing him, carrying him, he want to work his wheelchair stuff, I'm like, nah, get on my back. I'm going to take you up these steps. And so to hear him say thank you and to see him smile, it keeps me motivated because I know what it looked like when he wasn't responding at 14 years old. And so that what keeps me focused, that what keeps me going, is knowing that him seeing my success, it keeps him smiling, it keeps him here every day. And so I just keep looking forward and keep chugging and putting it before God. But he has become that motivation for me, because if he can smile and everything was taken away from him at 14 years old, I can't make no excuses. And so that's what it is like for me.
We have one more from my good man Joe right here. We're gonna do this last one.
How's everybody doing? My name is Che Larpuente. This is kind of an entrepreneur question that I'm currently trying to figure out for my own self. As you try to build a big idea, because if it's a small idea, probably do it yourself, but as you try to, both of you guys are doing big things, so as you try to build that, I guess what's a practice, because you just spoke on motivation, but what's a daily practice, or what's a response technique that you use or do when you trying to seek, elevating the financial bar or getting to the next project, getting the project funded? It's not how you stay motivated, but how do you respond when, people encourage encourage you to keep going, but they're not necessarily as open to sacrificing what they got going or joining you in the struggle. Like, what do you guys do for that?
If I respond, could you let me know if that was a good answer? So I'm gonna be turning to you, Ricky, to help me out. So for me, man, one of my practices is that, one, I wake up and I pray every day, right, in the morning. I try to get up before the whole household, and sometimes, even if I'm faking like I'm up, I try to show that I'm up, right, and I pray. But the other thing for me is that I ride in silence, and I tend to travel throughout the city by myself, and I ride in silence. I block everything out because for so many hours of the day, life is like this for me, right? Trying to run all these businesses and trying to keep my thought process fresh and a sound mind with all that's going on. So if I ever run into adversity or struggle, I could catch myself and make sure that, you know, I don't respond in a bad way. And then to your point about the idea, I always, like I said, try to go to God with that idea. And then I try to get with folks who are doing it on a high level or who's already making it happen in whatever industry that is, right? And so I can learn from them. And I think sometimes we go to people a lot of times without ideas, and it's too big for them. And so what they do is they stall us out, or they make it like it's too far to obtain. And so what I do is I do my homework. I sit back and I look and I Google and I sit in spaces and I figure out who is doing what I'm trying to do. And how do I question them or get with them? And because my big idea may be a small idea to them because they have obtained it. But sometimes we go to our homies, we go to friends and family, and they don't know what it takes. And so sometimes it becomes a burden for them. And so they do whatever they can or say whatever they want to say to get that burden off of them. And so we got to do homework. We got to research. We got to go find those individuals who are already doing it so we can learn from them, and then we can obtain whatever we're trying to obtain.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's excellent. That's excellent. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say anything better than that, but it's one, and I hear it in the prayer, is you got to have faith in what you're doing. Because if you're doing something big, it's not easy. And this world is very complex. And if you don't have some kind of higher guidance, right, you're going to quit, right? So I think faith is the most important thing. And then two is effort. Is effort, intelligent effort. And I think if you have those two things, you can figure anything out, right? Because it's like sometimes if we don't have faith and we're not connecting to some bigger image, right, it just gets too heavy for us. But something about just connecting, it like clears a lot of that stuff out and we can see clearly. Because if you can't see clearly, you're gonna get lost, all right? So I think that I just learned this in football. Is first, is appreciate how difficult what you're attempting to do is, right? And that's a reminder of why you need faith, right? At least for me, you know, my darkest times, it's just a reminder, and it helps. It helps.
Enough said. Round of applause for everyone.
Scoop, can I say one thing?
Now, third time's the charm. Can y'all please give a round of applause to yourselves first and foremost?
Hey, Darius, can I say one thing?
Of course, man.
I just want to tell you from black man to black man, young brother to young brother, I appreciate you. 2017, whatever it was, since that moment of you coming over to Southeast, even though you said, don't come to Southeast, you came over to Southeast and we met. And from that day, we have been brothers. Part of the story out. Right? Yeah. Like, I'm coming over there. And we were able to talk, right? And we never really give people their flowers. And I think this is a moment that I can just say, brother, I salute you for you to be able to come here and graduate, start your program here and make sure you include your entire city and always include me, whatever you do. is greatly appreciated, and the work that you're doing in Southwest is greatly appreciated. And I just want to tell you, keep moving mountains, brothers, because you never know who you inspire, and you inspire me as much as you think I inspire you, brother. So I appreciate you, man.
All shucks, man. But I appreciate you, Jimmy, from the bottom of my heart. Everything that has been shared tonight is a true story. And Good Projects has really been a testament to leading from the heart. Something that I know Ricky has done his entire career. It really is the, no offense to Jimmy or Scoop, but Ricky really is the cornerstone for tonight's conversation. Joining us all the way from Hawaii. We appreciate you and thank you for joining us. This brother, on 2 days' notice, literally flew out. I don't know, how long is the flight from Hawaii? How long is that flight?
It's I think 11, 5, I think 10, 11 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no, I swear to goodness, y'all, the Purpose Tour has really been a labor of love. It was something about these, between the Atlanta stop and the Georgetown stop. God had a special purpose and a plan. Everything else we booked out 3-4 months in advance. There was something about Atlanta and this Georgetown stop, literally, like it was coming down to the last minute. And I'm standing in the parking lot, and I was actually just celebrating. I was with my brother Philippe, my brother Markel. We're standing in a parking lot in Atlanta, the day of the Purpose Tour in Atlanta, and I'm like, guys, like, I can't just put anybody up there. We coming home. Like, this has to be special. And these brothers, God spoke to them in a moment, and he said, these are the 3 gentlemen that we need to have on this stage, on this platform, to be able to speak to this crowd. And that's one of the things, again, that gives me so much confidence, because I've just been sitting in the back. I'm literally the producer of this thing. I've helped put this thing together, but I learned so much from you gentlemen tonight. This has been one of the most powerful conversations that I've ever had the opportunity to be a part of. And by the grace of God, through this experience, I've been able to be a part of a lot of conversations. So from the bottom of my heart, my soul, my diaphragm from which my voice comes from, my 2 feet planted from near the ground, I want to thank you guys for blessing us with your presence, your experience, your love, your expertise this evening. Can we give them one more round of applause?